Tinasha's Mastery is one of very few weapons released during Episode 2 that I actually think you should consider having in your inventory. Unfortunately, it comes from Iron Banner, which only comes around every so often, and, is Iron Banner. Today, my goal is to find out the following. Number 1, is it actually worth getting? Number 2, what roles should you be looking for? And number 3, will this replace your Riptide or Deliverance fusion rifles with chill clip on them already, and or whatever weapon you currently use with chill clip? First, let's take a look at the possible roles for this thing. Unfortunately, the origin trait is completely useless for PvE, as it only works against other players. I get that it comes from PvP, and thus has a PvP-oriented trait, but adjusting this so that it has some kind of PvE viability would be nice. This is a stasis rocket sidearm, and even with some minor nerfs that this archetype has received recently, this weapon is still incredibly strong and incredibly popular. We have 3 other rocket sidearms available: the Call, which is Strand, Aberrant Action, which is Solar, and Indebted Kindness, which is Arc. It should not surprise you to hear that the most popular role is likely to include Chill Clip. Chill Clip has been slowly rolling out to other weapon types, but normally these weapon types don't have that much ammo per magazine. Glaives, grenade launchers, snipers, linear fusions, regular fusions. This is the first time we're seeing something with a good amount of ammo per reload get Chill Clip. That being said, it does take 3 shots to fully freeze a target when using the sidearm, so you're not going to get that many freezing shots. What else is available in the column that has Chill Clip? Well, it has a ton of damage perks. Literally all of the other perks are damage perks. Adagio, Bait and Switch, Desperate Measures, Frenzy, One for All, Surrounded. But, as I usually tend to suggest, take the gift that is being given to you and try to hunt for Chill Clip. If you really want something like One for All, like Desperate Measures, or some kind of other damage perk, you can get that on the Call, which doesn't require you to play Iron Banner in order to acquire it, and it's craftable. I'm not saying there's no merit to a stasis version of a rocket sidearm with a damage perk, but I think you need to have some kind of a loadout in mind already before you pursue a non-chill clip roll, even if they are frequent. It's very likely that you get a good non-chill clip roll in your hunt for one anyway, in which I would say it's not a bad idea to have every option that you can afford to have. If I were to pick what damage perk I actually want, I would probably go for One for All, as it's my favorite and just my personal pick for what I think is the best. Bait and Switch is a bit of work to activate for a sidearm. Surrounded will trigger very often in things like Contest of Elders or Onslaught, but I would just still rather have One for All. Desperate Measures requires a little bit of work to activate. Adagio is okay, but needs a kill and messes with your rate of fire. And Frenzy is just kind of okay. That brings us to the first column of perks, which is not as exciting. You have Air Trigger, Offhand Strike, Deconstruct, Enlightened Action, Impulse Amplifier, Loose Change, and Reverberation. Air Trigger might seem like an insane suggestion, but this isn't the Air Trigger you might be thinking of anymore. It's got increased reserves. It's got increased reload speed while you're in the air. Yes, you are penalized for shooting it in the air with some reduced target acquisition, but as long as you're not spamming a ton of shots in the air, this is a good trade-off. It is not that hard to jump and then reload for that bonus speed, but it might take some getting used to in the same way that Field Prep takes some getting used to. This is what I would consider a top-tier choice when paired with Chill Clip, among 2 other options that we'll talk about. This is the role that I wish I got when I played Iron Banner for 6 hours. Air Trigger and Chill Clip. Offhand Strike is usually memed on, but considering how often I am hip-firing a rocket sidearm, it's not the most insane pick in the world, and if you're hip-firing a rocket sidearm, don't feel too bad if this is all you get. Deconstruct needs a pretty specific encounter or situation for it to be valuable, so I think this is more of a coping on the future type thing, or maybe you're doing some kind of PvP thing, but from what I've gathered, people aren't using decon in PvP anyway. Tinasha's Mastery one-shots stasis crystals without the need for deconstruct, or fragments at all, for that matter. Enlightened Action is generally a safe bet on almost everything in the game, but in this case, it's a little bit weaker, at least to me it is, unless you're pretty much only using it on single target situations in order to stack the bonus pretty high. If the only roll you get is with Enlightened Action, though, like, I wouldn't throw it away or call it unusable or anything like that. Impulse Amplifier, not a bad choice at all, getting your rockets to your target faster and giving you a little reload speed bonus. Loose Change used to be a meme. It's not a complete loss here if you only manage to get a Loose Change chill clip roll. The reload bonus is not bad at all. Reverberation, I've never really been that impressed with, and I've also never really felt that blast radius has been a hugely important thing for rocket sidearms. Also, Reverberation increases the blast radius of the rocket itself when it's active. I don't believe it affects the detonation radius of the slowing pulse of chill clip when it is activated. At least that's how I'm reading it. When it comes down to air trigger versus impulse versus loose change, honestly, it's probably just going to be a matter of whatever drops first for a lot of people. I don't think the average person is going to want to grind more than they have to, especially Iron Banner of all things. As someone who has no trouble doing some sort of a movement thing to get a reload speed bonus, like field prep, like air trigger, I personally would have liked air trigger and chill clip as my role. Unfortunately, in 25 engrams, only 2 sidearms even dropped with chill clip, and they were loose change and impulse, and I don't think I'm heading back into Iron Banner, so it is what it is. I think I was okay with Impulse Amplifier in lesser difficulty content like Onslaught and especially Contest of Elders because ammo is much more plentiful, especially in Contest. So I didn't need to worry that much about blowing all of my ammo because I could just do that and then at the end of the encounter, I could just pick up more. But in doing a Grandmaster Nightfall, I did Birthplace of the Vial for a quick test. I found myself running out of ammo much more often, or rather having to pay attention to my ammo much more often. So I think having those extra reserves in a GM would have been nice to have. I care way more about my weaponry for GMs and raiding than I do anything else. So again, just would prefer air trigger. Even for a non-chill clip roll, I think I still want air trigger for the ammo, for PvE anyway. The next question is this thing worth getting? And I think that is a much tougher question to answer. Obviously, rocket sidearms are good, and chill clip is one of the best perks in the entire game, although it's more of a utility perk and not really a slaying out perk. Chill clip is valuable because it can stun multiple champion types without it needing to be in the artifact. But the easier the content you primarily reside in, the less I think chill clip has value to you. Personally, if I'm not on any kind of stasis-specific build, I would rather just have bonus damage. Even if I am on a stasis build, it isn't terribly difficult to freeze a target if you really want to freeze a target. Using chill clip to exclusively freeze and shatter a target for the purposes of damage, in my opinion, doesn't hold that much value. As the damage, it's not that crazy. I noticed this primarily in Contest of Elders. I was running my Icefall Mantle build in there, and rarely did I feel like I needed the effect of chill clip when I already had a ton of stasis ready to go. But even if I was on like Consecration Titan, the value of chill clip alone in that activity just didn't feel that high. I used a one-for-all sidearm in Contest as well, also Tinasha's Mastery, and the experience was mostly the same as using chill clip. In trying out a Grandmaster, again, Birthplace of the Vial, there were a couple of times where the instantaneous nature of shooting a shot from a rocket sidearm was better than firing a fusion rifle for the purposes of chill clip. A net positive that Tinasha's has over something like Riptide is that it can hit from much farther ranges, and it's an instantaneous shot. Now, you can just shoot a Riptide shot from super far away to trigger a stun on something. You still got to hit it, but you can shoot it from super far away. But the damage you're going to post with that shot will be close to nothing. However, an individual shot of a rocket sidearm versus something like a champion is a very small percentage of their overall health. So it's not like you're trading that much damage. You're mainly doing it for the utility of chill clip. All that being said, did I really feel any kind of a dramatic gameplay difference going from my Deliverance Fusion to a rocket sidearm for the sole intent of using chill clip on champions? Not really. No. If I gotta use a rocket sidearm, I'll use a rocket sidearm. If I gotta use a fusion, I'll use a fusion. It really didn't make that much of a difference to me. But maybe you hate using Riptide and you want to use something else. Maybe you hate using rocket sidearms and you just want to stick to a fusion or a glaive or sniper, whatever. Maybe you feel more strongly about your weapon selection than I do. In that case, use your best judgment. Ask yourself, do I care to grind Iron Banner for as long as it might take to get this weapon with Chill Clip? I'm guessing a good chunk of you are probably just gonna say no and rock the Riptide, and that's fine. I mainly wanted to compare to Riptide because I'm guessing that's the most popular Chill Clip applicator. I had some people asking if I was gonna compare it to the new Glaive, for example, which can also get Chill Clip, and the reason why I'm really not is because Glaives still have not been widely adopted by the overall community. They're really good if you know what you're doing with them. But it takes a bit more work to perfect using a glaive than it does a rocket sidearm. And yeah, most people are just still not using glaives. And if you're the kind of person who can pull off using a glaive in high-level content, raids, GMs, you probably don't need me directing you on whether or not you need to grind Iron Banner for a rocket sidearm. Do I think that a rocket sidearm with Chill Clip will completely revolutionize your experience playing Destiny? Probably not. But do I think it is one of the better offerings of this episode? Yes, I do. And while rocket sidearms are as good as they are, and while Chill Clip is as good as it is in endgame content for stunning champions, it is something you should at least give some amount of thought to as to whether or not you should go get one. Whether it becomes a super high-tier meta weapon, best weapon of all time, whatever, to be determined, I suppose. But my hunch, if you don't end up getting one, I don't think you're going to need to sweat too much. I think you'll be okay. If you don't have a good Chill Clip weapon already, then you should think about this maybe even harder. If you already have a good Chill Clip weapon that you enjoy using, if you have a Riptide or something, and you just don't want to do Iron Banner, don't worry about it too much. I think that's all I got on Tinasha's mastery, and I think that is literally all a human could possibly say on this weapon. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.